What's up, everybody? Welcome to Podcast Now Plus. I'm Alex. In this video, I want to talk a little bit about gaming subscription services. And this is something we've mentioned here and there, but we actually now get an article talking a little bit about an impact that it's had on publishers. Now, I think maybe overall the article a little clickbaity, or at least in terms of this tweet, a little clickbaity for the article. Very, very little of the actual article is talking about the ramifications of kind of these checks getting smaller from Sony and Microsoft. But I do want to kind of just focus in on that one part and talk about some things that I've been worried about actually for quite a little while. So, again, the gist of what they talked about very briefly in the article is basically these Game Pass and these PlayStation Plus, these checks, right, that Sony and Microsoft give out to companies to lock them in, whether it's an exclusivity thing or whether it's just a deal, maybe both of them give to get a game on their service. The checks are becoming smaller, right? They're paying less and less for them as time goes on. And this leads directly to, I think, a very big worry that maybe you don't have to think about every night. You don't have to go to bed thinking about every night, but it is something I think to keep in the back of your head as the next few years go on. I've long said, actually, I've been very consistent with this, with Game Pass being, one of, if not the best services, kind of out there in terms of the value. I actually think the amount of games PlayStation Plus gives is also quite a bit, not necessarily like PS1, PS2 era, but PS3 with the stupid streaming versus download thing, that's annoying. But they give you a lot of PS3, a lot of PS4. The subscription services are good. It is a good way of keeping these games around, and, oftentimes maybe they're hard to find physically. Maybe you don't want to bust out your PS3, or obviously Xbox has a lot of backwards compatibility things, but it makes it easier. I'm a fan of these services. I take advantage of them wherever possible. It's why I really don't feel bad when talking about, hey, Starfield on Game Pass. You could buy it, and look, you could say, hey, if you want to support a developer, best way of supporting a developer is to actually buy the game. That is totally true. That is definitely the way to go. However, if the game is free versus $70, I don't know about your guys' wallet, but I know about mine, not doing so great. So you know what? I'll take the free thing. But I've always been very consistent on that won't last forever. This entire situation is not going to stay incredible forever, because I actually do think this exact thing is what's going to happen. Actually, in the past, I've talked about the small times we've seen publishers talk about how much they were paid for a game. And I think I go back to, it was maybe Guardians of the Galaxy, and there's other games, but the amount of money that they've made, say, from Microsoft, and that is I'm thinking of an article, I don't even know if I can find it, but I feel like I saw a thing where it was Guardians of the Galaxy, or maybe it was some other game, where the deal was only like $3 or $4 million to get the game on Game Pass. Now, that's one example, and I maybe am not even thinking about it, right? But let's do some quick math. I mean, we can do this kind of in our head, right? You think of literally any game out there, and if games continue to move towards the subscription thing, which I think they will, and they already have for the longest time, right? They all move to it. Well, you're relying on the money solely from them. So you're relying just on Microsoft or Xbox's money and PlayStation's. That's it. And they give you the check and they say, okay, we're going to lock you in the deal. We're going to give you X amount of millions of dollars and your game is going to be on the subscription service. Now, you can say, well, Alex, you could sell the game. You can still sell the game. That's true, but as we've seen countless times, it seems like people take way more advantage of the subscription than actually buying it. So, and I honestly believe this to be the case for Starfield. Not saying it's not going to sell well, but if you look at, I assume, the amount of people that are going to play that game, I bet you it's 60% plus are going to play that game on Game Pass, not by actually buying it. That's my prediction, but I think I'm going to be right. And I think you can probably make that argument for literally any game. If you put a game, big or small, on a subscription service that you would get for free versus paying it, what will the majority do? They'll just go through the service, right? So then those companies are just relying on the money from Xbox and PlayStation. Well, what happens when that money becomes less and less? What happens when every game is trying to get on there? Or Xbox, PlayStation, they want every game on it. That's actually really what's happening. Phil Spencer, obviously such a big kind of figurehead for that. He'd probably want any and all games to be on Game Pass, which, again, for my wallet right now, not a big deal. But for the long term, for 5, 6, 7, 8 years down the line from now, will it actually work? I don't think it will. And I've always kind of said that. I mean, look, I don't know for sure, and I want it to work, but I just really don't think it will, because you will have so many of these companies, and the biggest thing is this. games are expensive. Games continue to get more expensive. And if you're going to rely just on a contract deal to get your game on a service, well, what happens if they don't give you the money that's required? So say you need $50 million to make a game, and they only offer you 10 to be on their service. Well, that's terrible. You know what I mean? That's not going to work. So that's why I was so surprised. I think it was Guardians. It could have been a different game, but it was definitely like under $5 million. And it's like, you put it on a subscription service. Now it's after the fact, right? I think it's a little bit different. The game sells, or they want it to sell, and then after the period where you can only get it by buying it, after that, then they put it on a subscription service. And that's a little extra dough, right? The company makes a little extra. But if all of these games, say, head to these services, PlayStation Plus or Game Pass, and they do it day one, it's one thing for the first-party games to do it, PlayStation exclusives, Xbox exclusives, but what about just these third-party deals? And as it becomes a thing that more and more want them to do, or Phil Spencer, Jim Ryan, maybe they want them to do, is there actually enough money to be handing out, say, oh, $70 million here, oh, you need $150 million, there's your contract to be on PlayStation Plus, oh, you need $25 million, we got you. There would be so many of these. I don't think it would work. I flat out think there's not enough money there. And so what ends up happening, and again, this article being just a little taste, and I think it's going to get worse as time goes on. Basically, they're not offering as much because there's more games on there. But again, you have a game that costs $100 million, you offer them 20, well, the game can't be made now. And if we live in a world where they're so reliant on subscription services, guess what? That game literally doesn't get made. Maybe they cancel it. Maybe they have to fire people, lay off half the studio, shut the whole team down, right? These are things that do worry me for sure. So I don't know. I live in this bubble, but I've been very honest about it in the past. I'm going to take advantage of this service when I can. These things probably won't always be this way. If I can get 10 Xbox exclusives a year for free, I mean, yes, you pay for Game Pass, but then, you get it for free. You don't have to pay 60 or 70 each. If I can do a couple of that for PlayStation Plus or enjoy the PS4 and PS3 library, like, I'm going to take advantage of it now, because in the future, either those services, and we've already seen this with PlayStation Plus literally today, the services are either going to get jacked up beyond belief where you're going to have to cancel because it's too expensive, or they kind of ruin themselves from the inside because there's not enough money and they can't afford to keep all these publishers or developers to come into the service. They can't keep them. And one of those two things is going to happen, and probably both, to be honest with you. So take advantage while you can, because it most likely is not going to last. Let me know what you think. Hopefully you guys like this video. I was pretty excited to record this one in particular today. Make sure, as always, you guys are subscribed, bell icon turned on, and I hope to see you all on the next one.